Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Galactic empires panic as Earth's ultimate weapon goes online. The Galactic Council convened in a state of emergency. For centuries, they had ruled the stars, their collective wisdom guiding countless civilizations across the cosmos. Wars were rare, and when they did occur, they were handled with calculated precision, disputes settled with overwhelming technological superiority, diplomacy backed by fleets of ships so advanced that resistance was futile. But today, something had changed. A new species had entered the galactic stage, one previously overlooked as insignificant. Their world was a backwater in a quiet corner of the Orion Arm, a planet plagued by internal conflicts, primitive politics, and an unremarkable technological trajectory. At least, that was what the Council had believed. Now, a massive holographic projection hovered above the chamber, displaying a warship unlike anything they had seen before. It was human in design, blocky, brutalist, and covered in thick armor plating. It lacked the elegance of an elven craft, the organic fluidity of a Sylvani vessel, or the mathematical precision of a Zealer dreadnought. It was ugly, and yet it radiated an undeniable menace. This cannot be, murmured High Chancellor Verilon, his silken robes rustling as he turned to his advisors. How did the humans build such a thing? They were barely capable of interstellar travel a century ago. The council chamber was filled with murmurs of disbelief. The warship, christened Indomitable, had arrived at the edge of council space only hours ago, its arrival triggering every warning system in the sector. It hadn't fired a shot. It hadn't made any demands. It simply existed, and that alone was enough to shake the foundations of the galaxy's ruling elite. Grand Strategist Thar, a member of the reptilian Qatar Dominion, leaned forward with narrowed eyes. Perhaps they have stolen technology. There is no way they could have developed this on their own, his voice dripped with disdain. Humans are chaotic, violent, and short-sighted, a species prone to self-destruction. Ambassador Nera of the Sylvani Collective shook her head. And yet there it is, she said softly, gesturing to the projection, a warship larger than anything our fleets have, heavily armed, heavily shielded, and moving with a purpose. A cold silence settled over the chamber. Then the central communication terminal flickered to life. A transmission had been received from the humans. All eyes turned toward the display as the image resolved into a figure clad in dark navy blue fabric adorned with golden insignia, a human, a leader. His expression was unreadable, yet his eyes carried a cold, calculating intelligence that sent a chill through the council. This is Admiral Jonathan Kane of the United Terran Navy, the human said, his voice steady. We are here as a courtesy. We are aware of the treaties in place regarding first contact protocols, and we respect them. However, he paused, letting the moment stretch before continuing, humanity will not be ignored any longer. The chamber erupted into chaos. The council chamber was in turmoil, voices overlapped, whispers of disbelief turning into heated debates. A species as young as humanity, bold enough to send a warship directly into council-controlled space. It was unthinkable, arrogant, and yet their Admiral Jonathan Kane stood, staring back at them through the massive holographic display, waiting. High Chancellor Verilon raised a trembling hand, calling for silence. The chamber slowly quieted, though the tension remained thick. He straightened his posture and faced the human directly. Admiral Kane, he began carefully, his voice a practiced blend of authority and diplomacy. You arrive unannounced aboard a vessel that defies all expectations. This Indomitable of yours, it is a warship, is it not? Kane gave a slow nod. That's correct. Chancellor Verilon frowned. And yet you claim this is a courtesy visit? Do you understand what such an action implies? The Admiral's lips twitched, though it was not quite a smile. I do. And I also understand what would have happened if we had arrived in anything less than a warship. A silence followed. The meaning was clear. For centuries, first contact encounters had always been dictated by the Council's strength. New species were greeted not with open arms but with a subtle display of power, swiftly shown their place in the cosmic hierarchy. Some were granted limited autonomy, others were guided into the fold. But humanity had seen through the game and, instead of bowing, they had arrived with a ship designed to survive. Grand Strategist Thar's claws dug into the armrest of his chair, his scaled lip curled in irritation. "You presume too much, human," he hissed. "We have ruled these stars for thousands of cycles. We have seen countless civilizations rise and fall long before your kind even grasped the concept of spaceflight. You are nothing but—" Kane cut him off. "With all due respect, strategist, we are not like the others." The chamber tensed. No species had ever dared speak to Thar with such directness. The human admiral leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "You see, our history has not been one of peace and harmony. We did not emerge under the watchful guidance of an elder race. We were not handed knowledge by benevolent overseers. We have fought for everything, against our own kind, against the elements, against the very nature of existence itself." He gestured subtly behind him, where a tactical display of Indomitable remained in view. "This warship represents what humanity is capable of when faced with an impossible challenge. You may have ruled these stars for thousands of cycles, but we have spent millennia learning how to survive against all odds." The weight of his words settled upon the council. Ambassador Nera, who had remained silent thus far, now spoke, her voice calm yet curious. "You speak of survival, Admiral, and yet you are here not as a conqueror, not as a supplicant, but as, what, exactly?" Kane finally smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only a razor-sharp certainty. "As a warning." Verulin's breath hitched. The chamber fell into a stunned hush once more. The Admiral continued. "For years, we have monitored Council-controlled space. We have seen how you treat those weaker than you, how you dictate the terms of their progress, how you decide who thrives and who remains stagnant." His voice grew colder. "That era is over." Thar shot to his feet. "You dare threaten the Galactic Council?" Kane didn't even flinch. "No. I state a simple fact." He clasped his hands behind his back, his stance exuding confidence. "We have no desire for war, but we will not be assimilated, nor will we allow ourselves to be dictated to. Humanity will not kneel." He leaned in slightly. "And if anyone here thinks otherwise, I invite them to try." The hologram flickered off. The chamber sat in stunned silence, every leader present now faced with an undeniable truth: humanity had arrived, and they were not afraid. The silence in the council chamber was thick with tension. No one spoke. No one moved. The holographic projection of Admiral Kane had vanished, but his words still echoed in the minds of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. Humanity had made its stance clear. For centuries, the Galactic Council had dictated the terms of civilization, shaping the fates of species that ascended to the stars. Some were allowed to integrate peacefully, others were subjugated quietly, and a select few were destroyed before they ever posed a threat. It had always been this way. It was supposed to remain this way. But now, for the first time in living memory, an emerging species had looked upon the Council's authority and rejected it outright. High Chancellor Verilon finally broke the silence. "This changes everything." Grand Strategist Thar sneered, his reptilian features twisting with contempt. "No. It changes nothing." He slammed a clawed fist against the table. "This is a single warship, nothing more. An overcompensation from a fledgling race that knows it cannot compete in true warfare." Ambassador Nera tilted her head. "You truly believe that?" Thar's slit pupils narrowed. "I know it. Humanity is a young species, barely out of its cradle. They lack the infrastructure, the fleets, the logistical prowess to wage war against the Galactic Empire. One warship does not make them our equal. And yet it is here. All eyes turned to the speaker. Lord Magistrate Vios of the Zealer Dominion, his species known for their cold intellect and mathematical precision, rarely spoke unless necessary. Voss regarded Thar with a calculated expression. A single warship sent alone into council space, he said, not to surrender, not to seek guidance, but to warn us. He folded his hands. The implications of such an act should not be dismissed so easily. Thar scoffed. Implications? They are posturing, bluffing. They know that if they act against us, we will wipe them from existence. Voss's gaze did not waver. Are you certain of that? Thar bared his fangs. Do not insult me, magistrate. Vios remained unfazed. I state only the obvious. There are unknown variables at play. His glowing blue eyes flickered towards the massive hologram of Indomitable, still suspended above the chamber. Consider this, humanity has advanced centuries beyond what our projections predicted. How? No one answered. We assumed their species was primitive, that they would struggle with interstellar expansion for another 1,000 cycles at least. Voss leaned forward slightly. Yet here they are, presenting a vessel that defies expectations, a warship built for prolonged engagement. The question is not whether humanity is a threat now, but how they reached this point without us noticing. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. Your arrogance will be your downfall, the Qatar strategist spat. You speak as if your species is untouchable, but let me remind you, you are alone. We could destroy your Indomitable in minutes. Kane exhaled slowly, as if he had been waiting for those words. Could you? A beat of silence. Then, with a flick of his hand, Kane activated a secondary display. A new series of markers appeared on the tactical map, this time behind the council fleet. Verulin's breath caught. Thar's sneer faltered. One by one, human warships began decloaking. Not just one, not just a dozen, hundreds. They had been waiting, silent, invisible, perfectly positioned. And now, the hunters had become the hunted. Kane's voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension like a blade. I suggest you rethink your position, gentlemen. For the first time in history, the Council was no longer the most powerful force in the galaxy. Humanity had arrived, and they had come prepared. The Council fleet stood frozen in space. A moment ago, they had been the undisputed power in this confrontation. Now, they were surrounded. Hundreds of human warships, sleek and deadly, had emerged from the void like specters. Their formations were tight, disciplined, not a single ship moved out of line. This was not an accident. This was not a bluff. This was intentional. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Kane allowed the silence to stretch. He knew the psychological weight of a perfectly timed maneuver. Let them feel it. Let them understand what they were dealing with. Verulin's composed mask cracked, his eyes darting across the tactical display. Thar, on the other hand, seethed with fury. Impossible, he growled. You were hiding these ships under our noses? Kane remained impassive. You assumed we were primitive. You assumed we were disorganized. You assumed you knew everything about us. He let those words linger before delivering the final blow. You assumed wrong. Verilon exhaled sharply, his mind racing. The Council's intelligence had failed them. The humans had built an armada in secret, undetected, beyond the Council's reach. It defied everything they believed about the natural order. Thar bared his teeth. This is treachery, trickery. His claws curled into fists. The Council will not tolerate deception from a lesser species. Kane's expression remained unreadable. A lesser species? He glanced at the display of the Council fleet, now surrounded, outnumbered, outmaneuvered. Is that still what you think? Thar's nostrils flared. His pride demanded action, but even he was not blind to reality. If they fired first, the battle would be devastating for both sides. And humanity was willing to fight. Verilon straightened his posture, regaining a measure of control. His voice was steady but strained. "Admiral Kane, we are now at a dangerous precipice." Kane nodded. "That we are." Verilon took a slow breath. "What is it that you want?" Kane studied the Chancellor carefully. This was the moment, the one that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. He stepped forward. "We want nothing from you," his voice was calm but resolute. "We do not seek your approval. We do not seek your guidance. We do not need your permission." He let the weight of those words settle before continuing. "We are here to state a simple fact: humanity is now a power in this galaxy. We will not be conquered. We will not be controlled. We will not kneel." Verilon's expression darkened, but he said nothing. Kane clasped his hands behind his back. "We will not fire unless fired upon. But know this, if a single human life is threatened, we will respond." His eyes met Verilon's. "And we will not lose." A charged silence followed. The Council had never faced a moment like this before. Never had a species declared its independence without asking. Never had a species entered their domain without fear. Humanity had done both. Verilon closed his eyes for a moment, then exhaled. "I see." He turned toward Thar, who looked ready to explode with rage. "Stand down." Thar's head snapped toward him. "You cannot be serious." Verilon's gaze was hard. "Do you wish to test them? Now? Here? At this moment?" Thar's jaw tightened. He wanted to fight, but he was not a fool. He could see the truth as clearly as anyone else in the chamber. A battle today would not end with a council victory. At best, it would end with everyone burning. With a snarl, Thar slammed his fist against the table. "This is not over, human." Kane nodded once. "I never expected it to be." The communication link cut. The Council fleet remained motionless for several moments longer before slowly, reluctantly, retreating from the system. On the bridge of the Indomitable, a ripple of tension eased through the crew. They had done it. Humanity had not just survived its first encounter with the galactic powers, it had won. Commander Grant exhaled, shaking her head. "They'll be back, won't they?" Kane watched the Council ships vanish into the void. "Yes," he said quietly. "And next time, it would be war. But humanity would be ready. They always were." The Council's retreat did not bring relief, only a heavier sense of foreboding. Humanity had made its declaration, but in the halls of power, words were just the first step. The real battle would come later. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, hands still clasped behind his back, watching as the last Council ships vanished into the void. The silence that followed was not peace, it was preparation. "Orders, sir?" Commander Grant asked. Kane turned, his expression unreadable. "We leave." Grant hesitated. "We're just going to leave? After all that?" Kane nodded. "We made our point. There's no need to stay and tempt a mistake. Besides," he turned back toward the viewport, "they won't forget this. And they won't forgive it." She exhaled. "No, I don't imagine they will." The bridge crew remained silent, exchanging glances. Humanity had always fought its battles with overwhelming force, but this was different. This was a war of perception, a war of power before a single shot was fired. As the Indomitable prepared for departure, a secure transmission came through, bypassing the usual Council channels, a rogue signal, a shadow whisper. Kane's eyes narrowed as the encrypted message flickered onto his personal console. He gestured for Grant to hold the ship's departure. He read the message, then he read it again. A slow, knowing smile crept across his face. "We are not alone. The Galactic Council may have ruled for millennia, but even empires cast shadows, and in those shadows, something had been watching, waiting. The encrypted message was short, but it was enough. There were others, species who had chafed under the Council's rule, who had lived as second-class citizens, forced into submission. They had watched humanity's arrival with quiet fascination, and now they saw something they had never dared to hope for, a possibility, a species willing to defy the Council. A species that did not beg for a seat at the table but instead built its own. The message was an invitation, a meeting deep within neutral space, a gathering of those who had long whispered of resistance but never had the power to act. Until now. Kane tapped his fingers against the console, considering. This changed everything. "Commander," he said. Grant turned, eyebrows raised. "Sir. Change course. We're not heading home." She frowned. "Then where?" Kane leaned forward, eyes gleaming with the weight of something far greater than a simple confrontation. "To see just how many others are ready to stand with us." The Indomitable turned, its engines burning bright against the void. The war hadn't started yet, but the resistance had just begun. The Indomitable cut through the void, its engines humming with restrained power as it left the Council's territory behind. Humanity had drawn the line, made its stance clear, but now something even more dangerous was unfolding. Admiral Kane reread the message on his private console. Coordinates, encrypted, time-sensitive. No direct transmissions, no unnecessary attention. "We are waiting." The invitation was clear. Someone, or something, had been watching, and now they were reaching out. "Commander," Kane said, his voice calm but firm. Grant turned from her station. "Course plotted, but I don't like this, sir. We have no idea who we're meeting." "Neither do they," Kane folded his arms, "which makes us even." The crew had been expecting to return home, to regroup, to prepare for the inevitable war with the Council. But this was unexpected. "Sir," Lieutenant Voss, the ship's intelligence officer, spoke up. "We've done some initial scans on the coordinates. The system is a dead zone. No registered colonies, no official trade routes." He hesitated. "Which means if something is there, it's been kept off every known record." Kane nodded. That was the point. The Council's reach was vast, but not absolute. There were always places beyond their control, places that had been forgotten or erased from the records. That's where rebellion grew. "Any signs of a trap?" he asked. Voss shook his head. "Nothing yet, but it's a good place for an ambush." Grant crossed her arms. "And we're just walking into it?" Kane turned towards the viewport, watching the distant stars slip past. "We didn't come this far just to play it safe." The system was dark, a dying star flickered weakly in the distance, bathing the scattered asteroids and frozen moons in a dim reddish glow. There were no signs of civilization, no beacon signals, no planetary settlements. Nothing. And yet, the Indomitable was not alone. "Contacts," Voss announced, his voice clipped. 3. No, 5 ships decloaking. On the tactical display, dark shapes flickered into existence. They weren't Council vessels, their hulls were patchwork, a blend of different designs and technologies. Some were old warships, others modified civilian freighters, each one bearing the scars of a life spent on the run. These weren't conquerors, these were survivors. The comms channel crackled to life. "Terran warship, you are expected," a voice said. It was calm, measured, but laced with something deeper, determination. "Transmit authorization code." Kane didn't hesitate. He sent the encrypted response embedded in the message they'd received. A brief silence, then, "Welcome to the Ghost Fleet." The largest of the ships, a heavily modified battleship, powered its engines and guided the Indomitable toward a hidden structure nestled within the shadows of a shattered moon. As they approached, Kane saw what had been kept hidden for so long, a fleet. Not the polished, unified strength of a galactic empire, but something different, a force built from remnants. Ships from species long thought to be under the Council's heel. Fighters bearing insignias of civilizations that had supposedly been integrated, and others that belonged to no known government at all. This was not an army, this was a movement. As the Indomitable moved into formation, Kane exhaled slowly. We are not alone. And if humanity had been the first to stand against the Council openly, they would not be the last. The docking bay of the hidden base was dimly lit, the glow of maintenance lights reflecting off the patchwork hulls of battle-worn ships. The air smelled of coolant, metal, and something older, like a place that had seen war but never surrendered to it. As Admiral Kane stepped off the Indomitable, he was met with silence. No formal greeting, no honor guard, just the quiet scrutiny of those who had been waiting in the shadows far longer than humanity had been in the stars. Then, from the gathered figures, a man stepped forward. He was tall, his features sharp and worn by years of conflict. His uniform, if it could be called that, was a mix of different military styles, patched together like his fleet. But his eyes were steady, like a man who had seen civilizations fall and still refused to break. You're late, the man said, his voice rough. Kane met his gaze without hesitation. We came as soon as we received your message. The man studied him for a moment before nodding. I'm Commander Drell of the Ghost Fleet. And you, Admiral Kane of the Terran Navy, have just set fire to the galaxy's most fragile order. Kane let a small smirk touch his lips. That was the idea. Drell didn't smile back. Instead, he gestured for Kane and his officers to follow. As they walked through the corridors of the station, Kane took in everything, the makeshift repairs, the repurposed technology, the soldiers who carried weapons from a dozen different species. This wasn't just a resistance, it was a graveyard of forgotten wars. You're wondering what this place is, Drell said without looking back. Kane nodded. A hidden fleet, gathered from the remnants of those the Council crushed. Drell gave a short laugh. Not crushed. Not yet. He stopped at a reinforced door and keyed in a sequence. The lock disengaged with a hiss, revealing a war room lined with holographic projections of Council-controlled sectors. Scars of conflict marked every sector, occupied worlds, lost battles, extinct species. And yet, among the red zones of Council control, Kane noticed something else, clusters of systems marked in deep gray, unclaimed, hidden. Drell saw where his eyes lingered. You thought you were alone, he said. You're not. Kane exhaled slowly, absorbing the meaning. How long? Drell's expression darkened. Decades. Longer for some of us. He pointed to the map. The Council doesn't tolerate defiance. Those who resist are either wiped out or forced underground. He turned to Kane. Until now, we've had no way to push back. And you think humanity changes that? Kane asked. Drell folded his arms. You already have. The moment you stood up to the Council and didn't break, you became more than a rogue species. You became a symbol. Kane considered this. Symbols don't win wars. No, Drell agreed, but they start them. A heavy silence followed. Kane looked at the gathered leaders, each of them representing a species that had suffered under the Council's rule. Some had been forced into servitude, others had lost entire homeworlds. They had spent years in hiding, waiting for something, someone, to prove that resistance wasn't futile. Now, that moment had come. Kane stepped forward, his voice steady. What do you need? Drell's eyes flashed with something close to hope. A fleet that can fight. Kane nodded. Then let's get to work. The war had not begun yet, but the pieces were falling into place. And this time, the Council would not see it coming. The war room pulsed with quiet tension. Holographic displays flickered, showing fleet movements, supply routes, and heavily classified data, information the council believed long buried. Admiral Kane studied the gathered leaders, each one hardened by years of oppression, exile, or war. They had survived not by overwhelming power but by learning how to endure, how to hide, how to strike when least expected. But survival was no longer enough.